Well, we just saw something tonight against the Grizzlies that we've never seen for the Warriors, and that is the two timeline guys, that being Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and Brandin Podziemski, collectively outscoring the right now guys, that being Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler. We have literally never seen that before, especially in the way it happened. The Warriors have been a terrible defensive team for the first 3 games of the season, despite being 2-1. As a matter of fact, their defensive rating puts them as a top 3 worst defensive team in the league, and that is a giant problem. And I question how they would look in tonight's game against the Grizzlies after the showing from the Blazers game. We knew that going into this game, the Warriors would not have Al Horford. They will have Al Horford for tomorrow night's game against the Clippers on the back-to-back. By the way, how crazy is it that tomorrow's game is going to start at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time? That is insane. Expect me to drop a video tomorrow past like 4 a.m. This is insane. Does the NBA have no regard for people who are on the East Coast? Anyway, things started off really well once again for the Warriors to start the first quarter. Steve Kerr went back to the small lineup where Draymond is at center, Jimmy Butler is at power forward, and Kuminga is at the small forward spot, and they put Podz back into the starting lineup. I'm not quite sure what the logic of the coaching staff is. In the previous game against the Blazers, when the Warriors went bigger and put Quinton Post into that starting lineup, they started off pretty well. It's when Steve Kerr started going to all these insane lineups really early on that the Warriors quickly fell apart in the later part of the first quarter. But this seems to be a theme. No matter what lineup the Warriors put out there, in the start of the first quarter, the Warriors go on a nice run, and then they allow the other team to go on a run of their own, and they just can't seem to put it all together on both ends of the floor. And that was the case again in this game when the Warriors initially scored 25 points in the first 6 minutes of the game. They were on pace to score 50 points, obviously an unsustainable pace. But then next thing you know, the Grizzlies go on a run of their own. They actually went on an 18-2 run. Absolutely insane. And then suddenly they have a lead to end the first quarter, 37-36. So what exactly happened? What lineups were being thrown out there? What adjustments, if any, did Steve Kerr make from the previous game against the Blazers? And what got into the kids in this particular game? We'll get into all those details and nuances, and if that sounds good to you, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and that like button so that this video gets out to all the Warriors fans out there. Let's get straight to it. So like in previous game, as I said, the Warriors initially got out to a 12-4 start. Really good. And offensively, everything was just clicking on all cylinders. The Grizzlies really couldn't do anything to stop the Warriors offense. In the first 6 minutes, the Warriors shot 10 of 13 from the field. Steph Curry had 8 points. Kuminga and Podz both had 6 points each. Butler had 5 points. And 25 points in the first 6 minutes of the game is absolutely preposterous. And then coming out of the timeout, just before Kuminga took a seat, he had 2 turnovers that ended up being quite costly for the Warriors. And before Kuminga fans go insane over this comment, those 2 turnovers proved to be Kuminga's only turnovers in the game. And you can make an argument that he was pretty much flawless thereafter. The reason I'm bringing up these 2 turnovers is because that's where the Warriors completely lost all momentum. And momentum is a real thing. Sometimes it starts out small and then it starts to pile up, and eventually sometimes it could become an avalanche. And that's kind of what happened in that quarter, because the Grizzlies went on an 18-2 run, like I said before. A bunch of new rotations were coming in at the time, and offensively they just couldn't get into a flow, they just couldn't get into a rhythm. And despite leading 25-15 at the 6-minute mark, again, the Warriors ended up trailing by 1, 37-36. Again, 37 points in the first quarter. The Warriors defense in transition has been a disaster this season. It's something that they really need to figure out a way to clean up. And again, any player could turn the ball over 2 straight times. It could be Steph Curry, it could be Draymond. Sometimes it may even be Jimmy Butler, although he's incredible at taking care of the ball. Just in general. Not so in this game. Jimmy Butler actually had 5 turnovers in this game, and Draymond had 4 turnovers in this game. I'm just telling you the sequence of events that actually occurred. Now, looking at some of the lineups that Steve Kerr put out there, it was actually really good. The first 2 guys to come off the Warriors bench were Quinton Post and GP2, and that formed a lineup of Steph Curry, GP2, Kuminga, Draymond, and Post. That's really good. That's a traditional lineup. The Warriors have a lot more size. You put Kuminga at the small forward spot. GP2 is at the 2. And fundamentally, these are the types of lineups that we want to see Steve Kerr utilizing throughout the course of the season. After that, a new set of players came into the game, and it was Steph Curry, Buddy Hield, Moses Moody, Jimmy Butler, and Trace. Another reasonable lineup, and in the long run, we want to see lineups like this so that the smaller players on the Warriors don't get run to the ground. It is a grinding 82 game season, and the Warriors just can't go tiny all day and night the way they did against the Blazers. The lineup gets adjusted once again, Steph Curry takes a seat, and Podz comes into the game, and this again is a functional lineup. And then the second quarter comes around and we get that traditional lineup with Quinton Post at that center spot. Moses Moody is back in the equation. So it's Podz, Moody, Jimmy Butler, Draymond, and Quinton Post. That is the original second and fourth quarter lineups dating back to last season that had a lot of success. And I have to say, we saw some really good things out of Quinton Post in this game whenever he got the minutes. And it's not what you would expect when it comes to Quinton Post. He only shot 1 of 4 from the field, only had 2 points, and yet he had a lot of moments where he was actually impactful. He was boxing out, he was rebounding, he was being a presence and a rim deterrent at the rim. There were a few times where he bothered Ja Morant into some misses. Yeah, the stats showed 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 blocks, and it even shows him at a -4, and that's because the Warriors got out to that deficit in that first quarter. But thereafter, every time Quinton Post was on the floor, he was effective doing his job at the center spot, and that's what we want to see first and foremost out of the center position. The center position, first and foremost, has to be an anchor, has to be a controller of their defense, has to be a reliable rebounder, these kinds of things. So big kudos to Post. I feel like he really did his thing. His shot, I'm sure, will eventually come around. He's gotten off to a really cold start in terms of shooting the ball. But that's his bread and butter, that's what he does. His shot will come around. What was very strange is that lineup was actually doing pretty well. But 2.5 minutes in to start that second quarter, Kuminga came in and replaced Quinton Post, and now they were trying a lineup of Podz, Moody, JK, Butler, and Draymond. And then the Grizzlies went on a 10-4 run. I don't understand why Steve Kerr made that change when you have a unit out there that is trying to regain its rhythm and they're playing well. So I just think that substitution pattern messed up the flow of what they had going on. Again, up to this point, I thought Steve Kerr was doing some really good things with the rotations and the lineups, considering again what happened in the Blazers game. And then in the middle of the second quarter, it started to look a little funny and it started to look a little wonky. Draymond and Jimmy Butler took a seat. In came Guy Santos. Now all of a sudden, you have a combination of Kuminga and Guy Santos at power forward and center. Those two are interchanging between the center spots, and I'm just like, what is going on? Steve started doing this in the Blazers game, and is this something that we want to see long term for this team? Guy Santos at the center spot or Kuminga at the center spot? To be honest with you, because everybody plays so well offensively in this game, it didn't really hurt the Warriors. And as a matter of fact, in the second half of the game, these wonky lineups were actually doing really well. There was a lot of power behind some of these small lineups because, well, let's say for the third quarter, for example, Moses Moody came in and he was put at the power forward spot, but he was playing really well. He was playing Santi Aldama really well. He actually blocked him right under the basket, and then the guy was just on fire. Moody was just hitting everything. He had 12 points in that third quarter, and he was really making the Grizzlies pay for not guarding him at the 3-point line. So Moody was the definition of 3-and-D in this game. He was 5 of 7 from the 3-point line, a steal, 2 blocks, 20 points. 20 points in 22 minutes. What an impressive performance by Moses Moody. Clearly the best 6th man off the bench in tonight's game. Is this something that he can regularly do? Coming off the bench and being the Warriors' 6th man and giving the Warriors consistent two-way play. We'll see. There's a long season ahead of us. And then you have Podz. Everybody has been picking on Podz, and kind of rightfully so. Not only has he been struggling from an offensive standpoint, defensively, he's just allowing everybody to kind of blow by him. He's been ineffective as a defender, as a guy who contests shots. He doesn't have the speed or the athleticism to consistently be a good defender at that shooting guard spot. And that's been a major point of concern. And in general, I still think that you should not close games with Brandin Podziemski because the Warriors will have a size deficit, a size issue. Even dating back to last season, if you think about it, there were a lot of games where Podz was the starter, right? But in closing time, Podz was almost never on the floor. He was always replaced by somebody else because the Warriors were simply too small when he's next to Steph Curry at the same time. But when he has it going on the offensive end of the floor the way he did, he just looks like a completely different player. And this isn't necessarily anything new. We've seen this from Podz plenty of times last season. He badly needed to break out of this mini slump that he was in and showed in this game what he could be as the best version of himself. 23 points, 6 assists, 5 of 7 from the 3-point line, super efficient, plus 17, great all-around game. And then you have Kuminga, who was two-way impactful in this game. This is definitely the best game of the season so far for Kuminga. He just played with a lot of great energy. 10 rebounds is awesome. 4 assists, 25 points, really efficient across the board, 9 of 14 from the field, and 7 of 8 from the free throw line. I really liked his activity on the glass in general. I thought his defense looked better, and a part of why those lineups that I'm very wary of, and I don't want to see the Warriors do a whole bunch of this throughout the course of the season, especially when they're on the road against tough teams and stuff like this. But part of the reason, especially in the second half, why the Warriors were able to go on a run despite being small and all these things was because Kuminga was doing his job at the power forward spot. Matter of fact, for this game at least, Guy Santos at center and JK at power forward didn't look half bad in terms of the results that we ended up getting. I do have my concerns though, that those kinds of lineups where the Warriors are just really small across the board, don't want to see that long term. I think that is fool's gold. I don't want fool's gold instilling bad habits in Steve Kerr, thinking that these insane lineups that he's putting out there is going to be okay if he does it consistently. But in that third quarter, with the energy of Kuminga, Podz, and Moody, the Warriors were able to build a really good lead, 36-24, holding the Grizzlies to 24 points after holding them to 24 points in that second quarter. That is very, very encouraging. And even more encouraging is the fact that Steph Curry didn't have to do a whole lot in this game. He only scored 16 points, played 30 minutes. He didn't have to get overly involved. And it's really nice and refreshing for him to have a game like this. Jimmy Butler also was very efficient. He had 20 points on just 8 shots. But the energy of the younger players really shined in this game. Full credit to them. Again, even though they rung up the score a little bit at the end there, stat padded a little bit, it's totally fine. If they're going to help influence the Warriors the way they did tonight, they deserve to get some extra points and whatever. Then they deserve to finish this game and continue to do what they've been doing the whole game. And if they're able to ring it up at the end, that's actually all the better for the Warriors. So given how well Kuminga, Moody, and Podz ended up playing in this game, I say it deserves a round of applause. Great game. Let's see if this is something that they can build upon and they can start to show more signs of consistency as the season progresses, because that is the biggest key. You can't have a game like this and then follow up in the following night against a team like the Clippers and then show that they're still not consistent enough to be really viable rotational pieces going into the playoffs. So tomorrow is a big game in general against the Clippers, division rivals. Al Horford will be playing in tomorrow night's game. Will the kids show up for that game against a lot of veterans on that Clippers roster? There's still lots of questions to be answered when it comes to this Warriors team, the roster, the construction, all the guards in the lineup, their smallness, all these things. But again, given the Warriors' defensive woes in their first 3 games, tonight was definitely a step in the right direction. Hopefully they can keep it going. Steve Kerr, for all the crimes that we saw against the Blazers in the previous game, I thought made much better adjustments in this game. There was a point early in that fourth quarter where the Warriors' smallness was starting to get to them a little bit. The Grizzlies started to get some offensive rebounds, some easy shot opportunities from those second chance opportunities. Steve made a quick adjustment, brought Trace back into the game, even if only for a stretch, and he just kind of kept mixing and matching. I do think that the Grizzlies bench is ridiculously weak. I think they are pretty short-handed. I mean, you look at that bench unit. I mean, Javon Small, Cam Spencer, Conchar, like who are these guys? Finally, I just want to say real quick, I posted a video earlier today. I broke down what happened in the first game for the Warriors, the Lakers game, where they had a 16-point lead, and that lead dwindled down to a 6-point lead in the span of like 3.5 minutes before Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler took control and they were able to come away with the victory there. But I pointed out what was wrong in that 3.5 minutes or so, and a lot of it involved Jonathan Kuminga. I showed every single defensive possession and where things went wrong. And there's a lot of Kuminga fans out there, and a lot of them think that I just have it out for him and I'm never going to say anything good about him and all these things. But literally, all he has to do is be consistent and ultimately shut me up. Tonight, he shut me up. He played really well and he was really consistent. And when he's able to do that, I'm always going to give him his flowers the same way I do for everybody else, even for a guy like Steve Kerr, who everybody knows I have a strong disdain for. At the end of the day, I'm just militant about making sure the Warriors are being maximized and playing to the best of their capability and making sure that they have the best personnel to do so. And if they don't, that's what I'm going to call out. A lot of people, especially the Kuminga fans, don't realize me a decade ago, David Lee was on this Warriors roster. That guy was an all-star, and that guy was a nightly 20 and 10. 20 points, 10 rebounds every single night, that guy. And for roughly 3 years, I complained about how the Warriors needed to get rid of that guy because they will never win anything as long as that guy is their starting power forward. Michael Jordan could not win a title if David Lee was his starting power forward in the playoffs. For me, it's not about stats. It's not even whether you're an all-star or not. There's a lot of all-stars in the NBA and all-star caliber players in the NBA that I would not want on the Warriors because they don't have certain championship pedigree ingredients. You know, there are players that are super productive in the regular season and then they're going to go into the playoffs and they're going to get exposed. A really good example of that would be somebody like Nick Vucevic. This guy is a machine in the regular season, super viable starting center. But that's the type of guy that is going to get exposed the further they get into the playoffs against the best competition in the world. And you don't want to be stuck with guys like that. So my standards when it comes to the Warriors is at the highest level. And if you don't meet those prerequisites, I'm always going to have an issue. I'm always going to point out the things that they need to correct or whether the problems are even correctable. Having said that, I'm going to try to roll out some film breakdown throughout the course of this season, probably during the daytimes. And the video that I posted today, Kuminga was an issue. The next one I'll probably do is the Nuggets game and how the Warriors ended up closing that game. And Kuminga was much better in that game, coexisted much better with a bigger lineup with Al Horford in there. And Kuminga was kind of shifting between the 2 and the 3. So when good things are happening with Kuminga out there, it'll be shown. When bad things are happening out there with him, that will also be shown. And this is actually vital for the Warriors because he's their starting small forward right now. They're relying on him heavily to be their best POA. So for those of you that are questioning, oh, how come you didn't do a film work of Brandin Podziemski? I don't even want Brandin Podziemski in the closing lineup. I think we all know that when you go into the playoffs and you have Brandin Podziemski, you know that he's going to be limited defensively. Right now, he's pegged down in the hierarchy of importance for the Warriors. Kuminga has went up. That means you, as a Kuminga fan, also have to raise your expectations because of the team he's on and what the Warriors are trying to accomplish with Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green on this team. This is not a normal situation. This is not a normal franchise trying to build up their future players. This is a right now, and this player needs to fit into this situation right now as much as possible. That's the thing that you have to consider when evaluating the young talents on this team, whether it's Kuminga, Moses Moody, Podz, Will Richard, or anybody else. Just trying to get you guys to understand and contextualize how my mind works. That's all I got for now. Ultimately, the Warriors are 3-1. A great overall start. They can really take off if they're able to get another win tomorrow night. Otherwise, they'll be back to closer to mediocrity with a 3-2 record. So tomorrow's a big test coming up. Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler did not have to overextend nor overexert in this game, which is a really good thing. And a quick shout out to Will Richard. Anytime he got the opportunity to play, he did really well. He just does a lot of things on the floor that are considered winning plays. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow night. Steph Curry is the GOAT.